Man, thanks so much for coming on the show. Stableshaman. I know you speak with your real name at times, and you've got your face, but for the purposes of building mystique, we'll keep this quasi undoxed. Your handle on Twitter is Stableshaman. I'm just going to take a wild guess and posit that this has something to do with stablecoins. What is it with stablecoins that you're into?
Yeah, GM. I actually had my previous handle was Bean Intern, which was a beanstalk, which was a really crazy stablecoin protocol. Which I never actually worked for them. I just had the handle, and I didn't realize that people were paid to tweet about cryptocurrency protocols. So I just made this intern handle and would talk about the protocol just sort of for fun. I didn't realize that it was like some people got paid to tweet. I was working my SaaS sales job during the day, and I would just shit talk on Twitter about Beanstalk as like a gag. And yeah, Beanstalk was this really crazy debt-based stablecoin protocol. It ended up going up to like 180 mil, and then it was like one of the biggest hacks of all time. There was a governance hack. I can't even go into...
remember this. Yeah. I was going to say, I was like, is it that beanstalk?
Yeah. So I can't actually, I don't want to explain Beanstalk to people that don't get it, but it's sort of like a complicated debt-based stablecoin, which I thought was interesting and sort of captivated me, the idea of how can you, because I think when people first get into crypto, they're always like, oh, but it can't be used as currency because it's too volatile. And I think that before it's big enough that Bitcoin and ETH become stable on their own, having these like stable coins as this interim is really what is needed for the rest of the ecosystem to grow. Like, I think if you can't use crypto as money, then you can't use it as anything else. And I think any of the composability or usefulness of tokens, it relies on your ability to buy them, and then people want to be able to buy them with dollars. And so it's like this limiting factor and this bottleneck to the rest of the industry. Like, if you want to trade meme coins, you need stable coins. If you want to have loans, you need stable coins. And I think people don't recognize that it's this important bottleneck because it's kind of not sexy. But I think that it's really important, and that's why I first sort of got really captivated. I'm particularly interested in like weird designs. I thought Terra Luna was pretty interesting. They obviously didn't execute
So did I,
actually.
Well.
They didn't execute too well, but like initially it was interesting to me. And my first protocol that I worked on full time was actually called Vault Protocol. I still have a pretty good relationship with Kirk, who's working on like a debt project now from the same sort of team. And we were actually trying to make a CPI pegged stablecoin, which was pegged to an inflation adjusted dollar. And then the idea was we would seek yields through DeFi to try and outpace inflation. I now think that's become a bit of a trendy topic again now, but I'm convinced that it's like not really possible, because I think if you're beating inflation with size consistently with zero risk, then you're just the best fund manager in the world, and there's no reason that you would offer that as a service for free.
You're just peering into the future and being like, well, I can outpredict the market, so what do I need this for?
Yeah, and so you wouldn't be giving that out for free as a stable coin. But I think the reason like stable coins and then CPI was interesting to me is just this idea that I think crypto's hard for people to wrap their head around, living somewhere where we have like a trusted third party. So in Australia, in America, in Europe, in the UK, you have trusted banks. So you can transact. Like, I can send money to my friend and it's no issue because I trust ANZ and I trust his bank. And I don't even have to think about the fact that it could be risky trusting someone. But I think that that's like a big privilege of people that live in places with trusted third parties. Like, we have the government who we trust, and I guess depending on what spectrum of schizo you exist on, but you have these third parties that you trust enough to move your money around. But I think that's actually really a privilege for people living in certain places. So if you're in, I think like Turkey and Argentina are probably good modern examples, but I've heard it's pretty common in like Ukraine as well, is that people don't necessarily trust their banks. So they see stable coins as this like alternative and way to escape local currencies if they're not performing, and ways that they can store large amounts of money without government interference. And I think that in those sorts of places, it's like really powerful and empowering. that they can't spin up an American bank account, they can't spin up an Australian bank account, but they can sort of access this quasi dollar through the power of stablecoins. And I think my like really long term belief is that crypto and stablecoins to a lot of the developing countries will be this like slightly worse version of our banking system that anyone can access. So it's like I'm willing to have a counterparty so I get maybe slightly better rates and I can transfer for Oster because my bank is centralized and they offer all these services. But I think for someone that wants to have no ID, no anything connected to it, completely permissionless, they'll probably be able to access a lot of the same services, but with none of that counterparty. I don't think that I don't see decentralized finance completely beating centralized finance anytime soon, which might be a controversial opinion. I'm not like fuck the banks. I actually like kind of pro banks, pro government, really hot take in crypto.
Yeah.
But
it's not very schizo of you, but yeah.
But I think that people who don't have access to that stuff, it's going to be massively empowering for them to be able to access banking. Because like if you're in a country that, I think a lot of this, when I was pretty young, I visited Timor, which is like a small country connected to Australia. And there, like they don't really have local currency, so they use the US dollar. And it's crazy to me, like they sort of don't trust paper money enough. So a lot of their savings is in building materials. So they'll just buy bricks and store the bricks at their house because they know that they'll need to build a house in the future. And so savings is kind of like you're buying the building materials over time to build a house rather than holding the dollars, because holding the paper dollars is like hard and dangerous. And then
shit.
that
I'm surprised
happens.
no one's just like tried to tokenize this yet. Like
yeah, that's sort
protocol
of like I sort of, when I was there, I was like, this is a perfect application of crypto. Like they all have phones, they all have Wi-Fi, there's like free internet, but everyone uses cash payment to the US dollar. And it's crazy at the moment that like, and don't quote me on these stats, but when I was last looking into it, it's like 70% of US cash ends up overseas. And
damn.
It's like there's still more US cash overseas than there is stable coins. And it's like that, even if you're really bearish crypto, you probably think that like a US dollar stable coin is better than having cash in in your wallet. Like you can send it around faster. It's easier to get rid of large quantities of. Obviously, it's more traceable, so it's not as good for stuff like crime, which is probably what a lot of the cash outside the US is. But I think that's like another perk, I guess, rather than a benefit.
Well, I'd say that in Australia, like purely speaking from like a UX perspective, I think we're very blessed as Australians with the kind of fintech shit that we have. Pay ID, Osco, being able to send shit instantly. Like even traveling through Europe and just hanging out in different Euro countries, you're like, whoa, the infra here sucks. Like, how do you guys do banking? I'm like, it's even true in America to a certain degree. Like you hear people talk about how they have to go to banks to do all this shit, and you're like, wait, what? You can't just do that with an app?
Like, I got confused when I tried to. I was in America and I had to pay for my drinks, and they gave me like a cup with the receipt in it, and then I was like, what do I do here? And I was like trying to wave my phone at them, and then they were like, we don't accept Apple Pay. And I don't carry a physical wallet, and I don't carry any physical cards. I just have my phone, which has my license on it. I'm not sure if you guys have that in Victoria, but yeah, my phone has my license and my cards on it. So I don't have a physical wallet at all. And then they were like, we don't accept Apple Pay. And my brain, like, I was like, what do you mean you don't accept Apple Pay? Do you guys not have cards here? But yeah, you needed a physical card and to sign, and I ended up having to get someone I was with to pay for me.
Yeah, dude, it's it's quite interesting how far ahead I feel Australia is just in terms of fintech infrastructure. Surprisingly, like I think it's not something that people expect. But yeah, going overseas, you realize how limited just fintech UX is everywhere. Let alone even arguments around like, oh, we needed to inflate like stablecoins to protect against inflation, but just basic payment layer infrastructure of like going to France, you still need to call up your bank if you're going to, do more than like 2,000 euros worth of payments from a certain card. And if not, you have to get permissions to get a special card, like a carte bleue that does different shit. And you're like, what? This is insane. I don't
Yeah,
have to
that's
call up
another
a bank teller to spend more than 2,000 euros in like 2 weeks or something.
international transfers as well. That was
Hmm.
a big use case that I looked into in quite a lot of depth, because same sort of thing of like a lot of people in developing countries, they'll like work in Australia and then send money home.
Hmm.
And sending money internationally is like so fried. You need to, it's normally there's like up to 5 counterparties and then normally at least 3. And there's like a bunch of points where someone has to manually check and say like, yep, this money can transfer. And so if you use Western Union or some of these like international transfer places, it can take up to 5 days and it can be like up to a 20% fee. And like
Yeah.
some like TransferWise and some of these like trendier apps are a little bit better, but I think that you don't have access to them necessarily depending on which jurisdiction you're in. So
Yeah.
it's
They can
still
be
pretty
hard to
gated.
access, and the fees are still fucking huge. Like
Yeah.
pre crypto, when I would go overseas and I'd look at, transferring some AUD into some euros or US dollars, it was always through TransferWise. And I'm not up to date on their most recent fees, but at the time it was between like, it was like 3 and 5%. And
Yeah.
if you're sending like anything over 5 grand, like 5%, you're like, wait, whoa, no. Like that's too high. I'm not asking for anything special here. I just want this money, and you're paying the exchange rate, which they're taking
Yeah.
a spread on. So you're like,
It's the same thing again, where it's like it's not as big of a deal. Like me going for my Euro holiday and then needing the cat. I'm kind of okay to pay. Like I pay dumb rates because it's
yep,
kind of a holiday. But then if someone's like, yeah, sending money home and they're only owning like a tiny bit of money, like every dollar counts, and they're getting gypped by like Western Union paying
yeah,
absolutely crazy
it's
rates, and it sometimes takes 5 days. Like it's just crazy that we're still that's still the way things work. When there's obviously this like better tech that's there, but I think it's just not easy enough for everyone to access yet.
yeah, extremely quote unquote privileged of me to be moaning about sending money over so I can go on my European vacation. I'm like, oh god, they're extorting me.
No, I
I'm
think
trying
it's
to go over here and drink on a yacht. How dare they?
yeah,
It's like,
but I think that sort of ties into one of the reasons I was like really interested in Infinex. So
mm,
prior to this, I was actually at a venture fund for a year as an analyst, and then before that, yeah, I was at that Vault, that stablecoin project. But like Infinex, our whole vision is sort of there's all this really good decentralized tech out there, but it's just too hard for the average person to use. Like I don't know if your parents or family, I'm guessing that they probably ask you for crypto investing tips. I get this all the time. They're like, which coins should
all
I
the
buy?
fucking time,
And
dude. Oh,
like I don't feel comfortable setting my parents or family up with Metamask or any decentralized apps. Like some of them, I'm like, yeah, use Coinbase or use this centralized exchange. But really, it's like, why am I recommending a centralized exchange to people when it's so against the whole thesis of crypto? It's like because there's no decentralized app that's self custody that's easy enough to use that I would trust them not to lose their money.
mm,
Um, and Infinex, we want to be the app that you can recommend to someone that's new. They'll be confident they're not going to lose their money, but you're still not having to trust a third party.
yeah,
So it's like something you can recommend to everyone. They can sort of access all the tokens or things that they want to do on chain, be that tokens, DeFi, NFTs, except it's really easy rather than being this like complicated writing down a secret phrase and hiding it under your mattress. And I think a big part of it is like we've taken the stance that seed phrases are just too dangerous for people to hold. And then we're really into pass keys, which is this new tech. I'm not sure how much you know about it, but it's like Google and a bunch of these other tech companies came together with this standard, and it's almost like a bit of Web3 tech is creeping its way into Web2 because it's like logging in with a private key rather than logging in with a password, and that private key is stored in on a hardware level. So like Apple and Google and Microsoft all support them, and it's stored in this like secure enclave at a hardware level. So it can't be taken out of the device easily. So it's kind of like turns any device you want into a hardware wallet, which is pretty cool.
you're speaking the truth there with the whole seed phrases and centralized exchange risk. as well. Like, because it is that those really big roadblocks to UX of like, one, whenever my family's like, oh, should I get involved in crypto? My instant knee-jerk reaction is, fuck no, stay away. Like, don't do it to yourself.
Yeah.
Well, at this point anyway, and for those reasons, but there's the centralized exchange risk of, I feel like people got, justifiably terrified of sharing centralized exchanges or any sort of facility post FTX, BlockFi, those kind of meltdowns. Celsius as well, of like, you used to think, oh, they're big reputable companies. What could possibly go wrong? And then in the span of 2 years, you had, I don't know, 4 or 5 multi-billion-dollar firms just go padoink. And it was like,
Yeah.
oh, shit. And everyone who shilled Reflinks during those days got absolutely poleaxed for it.
Yeah.
And then the alternative with decentralized infra is, oh yeah, I'm going to give my parents a fucking 24-word seed phrase and say, hey, don't lose this, because then all the money that you have is gone forever. Oh yeah, this little piece of paper you threw out.
It's
Sorry,
just
all the
cash.
money
It's
that's
like,
there is gone. Yeah.
it's hiding cash under your mattress is what I always liken it to. It's like, here's a massive pile of cash. Just like stick it under your bed and hope that no one finds it.
Except it's even worse, because it's like, it's not even like, you can't even like go pick it up. It's like, if you lose, you lose your bed. It's like, oh fuck, it's gone. Yeah, no. Infinex, I gave the crate run thing a go. I had a look, I had a play around. I like it. When I first saw it, it was like a decentralized exchange front end, but now
Yeah.
it's kind of rebranded into the UX layer. Can you go more into that?
Yeah, so I wasn't there for all of it. It's sort of interesting, the
Mm-hmm.
story. Will, one of the co-founders, I was good friends with him when I was an analyst, so I sort of watched the whole Infinex like roll out and heard it. Except I wasn't there. I sort of joined on once we'd already pivoted to this sort of UX layer, um, and spent many hours in rooms trying to come up with that name, because it's a bit of a complicated concept and still a bit of a sort of in progress. But I think for those that don't know Kane, he founded Synthetics, which is one of the biggest decentralized perp protocols. And yeah, it's a good way of trading with leverage without counterparties. And I would say it's the most decentralized sort of leverage trading platform that you can use at the moment. A lot of the other ones sort of have more of a centralization risk. But he built Synthetics, which is this really bottom up protocol, low level thing, which you can sort of, someone else can build an app on top of. And then like, so you have Quinta and a couple of other exchanges building on top of Synthetics. And so, and Kane, I think, saw that and realized that a lot of crypto has the same attitude of like, people are building this infrastructure and then they want someone else to come and build an app on top of it. Partly because like people in crypto, we're like cypherpunk nerds, we're not app builders. So it's kind of building stuff for the far future, building this like really low level, like superstructure type infrastructure is what everyone's North Star is. And no one really wants to be sitting there building the consumer app on top of it. And Kane sort of realized that the reason everyone uses Binance, like even people in crypto still use centralized exchanges. Like it's crazy. If you go to a conference and you go,
Yep.
oh, what do you trade on? And most people will trade on a centralized exchange, even though there's all this decentralized stuff. They'll only go to a decentralized exchange for something that's not listed. And it's not because the swaps are better, because a lot of the time you can get just as good rates on decentralized swaps as you can on an exchange. Like slippage is fine. Sometimes it's even better in decentralized avenues, but it's just too hard. Like I have centralized exchanges on my phone I can just easily log into, whereas I don't have all my seed phrases on me all the time. And they started off building just a way better front end for Synthetics, that perps platform. And then they realized, why would we just build a front end for Synthetics? Why don't we just build a better front end for everything? And so we're kind of taking the exact opposite bet, I feel, of a lot of the industry at the moment. Of we're saying like the infrastructure and the apps are good enough and there's enough fun stuff happening on chain. And we just want to make it really easy to access and really pretty. So everything that you can get access from something like Binance, we want you to be able to access through us, except it's decentralized. So you'll have access to way more apps. There'll be way more tokens there. You'll have whatever the hot new DeFi scheme is. We can build in other random games that pop up. And the idea is we'll be able to beat any of these centralized apps on features because we're just plugging in with other stuff. And that's where we sort of came to this idea of we're like a distribution layer for cryptocurrency. So I think another good way to think of it is almost like, in my head, it's a little bit like Amazon. Like initially in the internet, you have all these decentralized stores. There's different shops that sell everything on its own, and then Amazon came along and is like, hey, if we just slap all this in the same UI and put it all next to each other, it becomes way more useful to the user and way more convenient. And I think we're sort of trying to do something similar with DeFi and decentralized infrastructure. So rather than having to worry about what chain you're on or what your seed phrase is for which Chrome plugin, you just go to Infinex and we have whatever the hot new thing that you want to do on there.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's awesome. That solves the like a billion tabs open problem as well. Of just like, I've literally have so many, like, it's not like I've got capital on all of them or anything, but like when they
Yeah.
come up, you try them out, and then like even just the different decentralized exchanges for perps and stuff, like when Avo came out, and then the Drift protocol came out in Solana, and like just stuffing around on all of them. And yeah, I don't think it's funny, I never made the thought of like, oh, what if there was just a place where all of these could just be in one spot?
Yeah.
Like if I could just have a central place where there's just one wallet for all of them, instead of just opening up each tab and having a new. Obviously, you have all your wallets for them, but having to go to them individually and have all the bookmarks. Like I have a browser that's like the crypto browser, and it's just like the bookmarks bar is just like fucking 3 miles long of all the different protocols and dashboards that I have to go to be like, oh yeah, shit, let's check out that position on this thing. And you're like, oh.
I think a big thing is like and this is what always like resonates with me, is I think through my like journey, if I see a ticker on, like I'll see a ticker on the timeline and I can't just buy it. Like I should, if there's something that I want to buy, I should be able to just buy it. Except the reality is there's a ticker and then I go, okay, wait, which chain is that on? And then there's like 60 chains or whatever it is. And then there's like a million L2s on each of those chains. And then I have to like find out. So I see a ticker and I go, okay, what chain is that on? And then I have to go, okay, it's on this chain. And then I have to go, okay, what do I need? What funds do I need to get to be able to get onto that chain? And you need something to like swap into. And then it's like, okay, what's the liquidity pool in on what DEX? So it's like, what's the DEX on that chain you need to get to? And it's like, is there an aggregator I should be using instead of the DEX on that chain? And there's just all these hoops you have to jump through. And most of the time you just go, oh, I can't be fucked. I don't want to buy that thing.
And then you watch it rip 1,000x and you go, oh.
Yeah. So I think we want to make DeFi and crypto into like a fun game that you can quickly execute on what you want really fast. And you'll still have like all the normal risks of like, there's going to be rug tokens and there's going to be rug projects, but you shouldn't be getting rugged by like stuff being too hard or by like accidentally bridging on the wrong token or something like that. I think that all of those issues should just be abstracted away completely, and you should just be focused on like whether you're picking the right dog coin rather than whether you've accidentally gotten your funds stuck by using the wrong bridge or getting fished or something like that.
Yeah, the Infinex guys, you're making markets efficient. Oh no. No. The ultimate challenge would be, I remember the one thing, the project that really did my head in figuring out how to buy it was Jewel DeFi Kingdoms. Like that was that was a slog. Like bridging to AVAX, going from AVAX and then going on to the whatever chain it was.
Harmony chain?
Oh, this is post Harmony.
Okay.
I took a bid on Jewel the start of the year. It did not work out. But just going through that process of being like, and then bridging to that chain, and then going into the game and going to the banker to buy I was like, holy shit, this better pay off. It took me an hour and a half.
Yeah.
But yeah, it might be one of the more useful things I've heard of in crypto in a long while, in terms of being like, hey, we've got all this shit. Let's put it all in one place and let's make it accessible.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is like there's teams that don't want to build like the UX as well. So you'll find projects and they want to build some really efficient on-chain order book or something like that. And they'll just slap like a random UX on top of it at the end, which is basically copy pasted, and they'll call it a day. And people will use it because that's what they're sort of used to. They're used to the same exact user experience in crypto of like connect wallet and do all these things. We kind of have Stockholm syndrome for all these bad practices. But I think that like the next...
That's a good way of putting it. I'm so used to it.
As people are like... As like new users are coming on, they just won't tolerate that stuff. I think that like new people that come, like the amount of people that are willing to use MetaMask, and maybe this is like really hot take, but like willing to use MetaMask and learn a seed phrase is like probably peaked or near its peak. I'm like, there just isn't that many people that are that nerdy and care that much and want to learn this stuff. But it's like the amount of people that want to buy dumb dog coins, I don't think is like, I think that number's going to keep going up like crazy. But the number of people using seed phrases, I think, isn't going to keep going up that much.
Yep, I'm inclined to agree, and I think the market reflects that opinion fairly well. Of just like, holy shit, this is getting too convoluted. Like, I mean, I made the switch from MetaMask to Rabby purely for UX decisions of like seeing transaction simulations and all that kind of stuff, and I found that to be way better. But again, it's not something I'm going to recommend to my like anyone I know is like, oh yeah, just use this, because it's not having it in juxtaposition to, oh, well, MetaMask is just totally cooked, but this thing kind of simplifies it a bit more.
Yeah, I downloaded Rabby and then I went back to MetaMask because I expected like the way people were talking about it, I expected this life-changing like difference. Like, people were just ranting about how good Rabby was and how bad MetaMask was. And then like Rabby is a bit easier and a bit better, but it's not, I don't know. It wasn't
That's the
enough.
level of psyops in crypto. Is like, Rabby's amazing. Holy shit. And it's like, guys, it's not that good. Your like, auntie's not going to use Rabby.
Yeah, like you sometimes can avoid getting scammed because you can see what the transaction does like slightly easier.
Hell yeah. This is progress. This is mass adoption, Shaman. This is what it looks like. You were talking about having some alpha. Some alpha leaks, so I think for like Infinex.
The next stuff that's we've got, because our whole thing is that we sort of want to make it as easy as possible to be involved at the ground level, and we're not really. We think that a lot of projects do this sort of like fundraising, which is really not transparent, and it becomes really difficult for the community to get involved. But we've just got our like pretty transparent patron sale coming up. And on top of that, we should have a card game coming pretty soon, which is really exciting. It's sort of based. We're doing a play test in the office, and everyone was checking it every day on the play test, and we're all talking about it in the chat, and everyone sort of missed it at the end. Yeah, it involves like kind of predicting, and then there's prizes and opening card packs, and that should be coming out in the next couple of weeks. And then there's going to be some pretty juicy rewards for it as well. Except I think you participated in Great Run. So our whole thing is just like proving that we can create fun and interesting experiences leading up to building out all of the more juicy features. But after Counter Run, whatever the card game is going to be called, we're going to have sort of the integrations actually rolling out. I think the first one's going to be Jupiter, so trading meme coins on Solana. And then... Nice. We'll see what else comes.
I'm keen to play some card games. It's been a while, especially if there's rewards involved. I'm ready.
Kane was inspired by Fantasy Top, I think. He had two analysts who were pretty much full-time playing Fantasy Top for him. So that's what happens. That's what happens.
I got to get a job at Infinex. This sounds great. Kane, if you need someone to play Fantasy Top, man, listen. I'm open to offers.
Yeah. No, there are people. The analysts playing Fantasy Top. It's above my pay grade. They're much smarter than me.
I imagine this involves some actual fucking ideas.
He's got the big brains on that. I don't know if either of us would qualify.
True. Like, hey man, how's it going? I'll be like, I've lost everything, Kane. I'm so sorry. Sorry, I blew up the account. Can I get some more? I should not be trusted with other people's funds for crypto. My own money is its own problem. I've seen that you've been doing, and this is something like I've noticed just on the social presence. Like I've seen a lot of kind of like brain rot adjacent content coming out of Infinex, and I've found it actually quite interesting. We were talking about this before about kind of like sneaking the good stuff into the slop. Just interested to hear you talk more about that, kind of leaning into the game.
Yeah, so I think it's something that I've seen as a trend, and I don't think we've quite nailed it because I'm waiting for one to go really viral. But I just think everything content-wise is gravitating towards these short snippets that grab your attention. think a little bit like clickbait. Like, yeah, if you looked back a couple of years ago around like BuzzFeed era, like clickbait was seen as this like kind of scummy thing to do, I think in the same way that brain rot is now. But the reality is now like everything is clickbait. Like even, and no one gets called out about doing clickbaity titles anymore, or there's no stigma around clickbait anymore, because that was just the best way to grab people's attention. And so that's the norm. And it's more like if you're not writing a really, because like what is clickbait? It's a really engaging headline or title. And it's like if you're not doing that, then you're kind of just leaving cards on the table and not making your content as good as it can be. And I think it's the same with this like brain rot. And we do it sort of as a bit of a joke, except I also think like it makes people watch more. Like we've been adding the little Minecraft window at the bottom of the screen and
The
other
Subway
bits and bobs.
Surfers to the
Yeah.
thing. But it's fucked. But I'm like, I literally was like, oh well, now I'm watching the video to completion,
Yeah.
just
And I
because
think
I'm like, well, great, it's got me.
and it's a bit of there's a bit of an art to it, but I think that that's just the way content is going. And I think in a broader sense, I think that um, this sort of smaller, independent, low budget, but really like harnessing those tricks is just like the future of media. And I think we're starting to see it is like socials are becoming so powerful and so much stuff unrolls on social media. And then the key to being part of that conversation is how easily can you wedge yourself up the algorithm by making it as engaging as possible. And so I think although this like brain rot type content is seen as like dumb and weird now and like Gen Z / Gen Alpha, like iPad baby coded, I think that it's actually sadly just the direction that things are going. And I think that you can like sit there and try and be above it, or you can embrace that that's the way content's going and then try and learn to be a part of it. And I think that's the same with like any new technology or innovation, as crazy as it might be calling these like short form videos innovation. I think there's like a big wave and you can either like buckle down and try and fight it and then be left behind, or you can decide to join it and jump on.
It is. It's interesting because there's that like it's kind of an indictment on the human race that's what's like taking off, and you're like, oh man, that's tragic. But it is that brutal truth of like, well, fuck, it's not like what we're doing on social media is as glorious. Um, I mean, well, not all of it. I would say that, you can be dutiful with being like, okay, I'm going to go watch engaging long form content that's, nourishing to your intellect or however you want to position it. And then there is also just the moment where you're having a fucking scroll. And it's
Yeah.
like people are going to be scrolling and therefore creating content that captures people's attention while they're in a scroll hole. Like, why not sneak in the veggies?
Yeah. I
It's
think,
like baking your spinach into like a really delicious meal. You're like, yeah, we're getting it in. Is it a salad? No, but it's good enough.
yeah, the scrolling thing is like, I have like a love-hate relationship with this as well, because I'm like terminally addicted to Twitter, but then also it's my job.
Same.
And at the same time, I do get a lot of usefulness out of it. Like if something happens, I feel like I know about it really quickly. And
Mm.
the usefulness of that varying. Most of the time, probably not that useful. Sometimes very useful. But in terms of like a big news feed of what's happening in the human race, it's like pretty hyper efficient at that. And that's what makes it so addictive. And it's sort of what makes it useful, but then overusing it can be bad. And I think that, like a lot of media, like if you look back in the past, people thought that radio was bad for you, and then people thought that TV was bad for you, and then people thought that internet was bad for you, and now this like new world of like doom scrolling is the next boogeyman. And I think although overindulgence in anything is bad, I actually think that being able to flick through your phone and get a bunch of interesting information relevant to you is this like really powerful tool. And I think that curating it is going to become increasingly important. This is something that some of my like more schizo internet friends and I talk about on Twitter, is the idea of your like data diet and your cognitive security, which is like being careful of what you let into your brain. And you can be like the same with Twitter and algorithms. You can sort of teach them what, if you see something you really don't want to see and you like delete it, say you don't like this, and you're really persistent with that sort of stuff, it will clean that stuff out of your feed. And you can curate a good feed for yourself, but it's just like has work. You need to put in work in the same way that like curating a nice diet or curating the right media you consume takes discipline and work. And I think that it's a space that I'm interested to see evolve, whether people have like custom, and something Elon's talked about a little bit is like, do you like customize your own algorithm that shows you feeds and things like that? Because the idea of having this like AI that's out there scraping all of the data on the internet and then popping up to you the most interesting things relevant to your life at the time is so futuristic and utopian and powerful. But I think just like learning to harness it in the right way is important. And so I
Yeah.
think I like recognize the dangers, but I think I'm more optimistic about it than most people are on like the scrolling.
Yeah, dude, it's interesting to hear an optimistic take because it's like I naturally have a proclivity for the doomer camp on this. Like
Yeah.
all my natural instincts tell me like, oh my god, the fucking data scientists, they're training everything to make it more addictive. It's all fucked. Everyone's coming for your attention, and you do just kind of instinctively throw your hands up in the air and think, well, fuck, like what's the point? It just leads to this like defeatist mentality around content, and it's like unless I go build a cabin in the woods and like grow my own food, there's
Yeah.
probably no avoiding this. It's like unless I leave society, take my girlfriend and go raise like a little family in the woods without screens. It's like I'm not going to be avoiding this, and I don't like having things kind of in my day to day that I like, that you just kind of feel defeated by. It's like there's no point. It's like I don't want to go about my day being like, oh shit, okay. And so I think having like kind of a stoic, optimistic approach towards data usage and being like, no, I do have some level of control over how I would, choose to have a digital diet. I think that's Jack Dorsey's point with Blue Sky, whatever happened with that.
Yeah.
But that idea of like, plug in and out your level of algorithm, control how much you see, what you don't see, how much you want to be like algorithmically driven, and how much you want. I don't know how that has gone. I think he left the project in its entirety.
Yeah, I was
recently.
on Blue Sky. There was a little bit of Blue Sky like hype for a hot minute, and I was on there for a little bit. Except then it seemed to die out pretty quickly.
Same thing with like Threads. It was like, hey, check out the new app. It's the cool new thing, and then just I think what happened to that?
Threads is interesting because it kind of like front ran what Twitter has now become. I went on Threads and it was all like slop posting and celebrities talking about stuff, and I was like, I'm not going to use this because it killed the whole like algorithm and vibe that Twitter has. And
Here's what the genocide in Rwanda taught me about B2B SaaS sales. And you're like, fuck, Jesus.
And then Twitter has just gravitated towards what I feel Threads is actually more like over time, which is interesting. So
yeah, the For You tab has just become, dude, post Donald Trump assassination, that was bad, dude. I was getting like, I was getting like white supremacy posts, just popping up, and I was like,
it's gnarly.
Hey-o.
It's gnarly.
I definitely didn't curate this.
Yeah, it's pretty. I think that's one of my like tinfoil hat theories. I think, and it's not even that tinfoil hat now. Is when I thought that when Elon first bought Twitter, is he like saw what happened with Cambridge Analytica in the election, and then he was like, "Hey, what if I buy this social app? Then I can."
Then I can do it.
Then I can do Cambridge Analytica Electric Boogaloo too, but for whatever party I want to support. I think part of the motivation, at least behind buying it.
It's about freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Who would we be to question Elon's intentions on freedom of speech? It's obviously a noble philosophical goal. No reason to throw self-interest in there. Mm-mm.
I think on the optimism thing, and that's something we touched on earlier, was something that when I was really early in my Twitter arc, I came across like Beth Bezos and a couple of the guys pre like EAC being a thing. And I just remember
this is wild. Yeah.
The thing that when I first met him online, the thing that like I heard him in a Twitter space, and he was talking about like how you would design Bitcoin miner satellites and how much detail he'd thought about that. And I remember him explaining to me that like the heat won't radiate off the chips in space because there's nothing for the heat to, it'll radiate, but it won't do any convection to get the heat away because there's no particles for it to touch, and it can't radiate the heat fast enough. So you need a better way to get rid of the heat. And then the best way to do it is basically to like have a laser or a microwave that's powered by the heat and then fires lasers randomly out into space using that energy. And and that as like a way of cooling something just like blew my brain sideways. And I was like, I heard him talking about that, and I was like, wow, this guy's really interesting. I definitely want to like hang around him and see where this is going, because he was like schizo posting about that. And we talked a lot in spaces. And I remember at one point we were doing like regular Twitter spaces with a couple of other people, and it was all just like talking about tech stuff and how it was interesting. And I think a big part of it was basically that, like, I think as we talked about before, and this is what latched me into it, it's just the idea of like being excited and interested about the future and like doing your most to sort of improve it is what latched onto me. And I think the message has like changed a lot, but it started off just because we saw EA and thought it was kind of dumb and weird. And it was almost just making fun of EA. But then Beth, the like EAC founder guy, just became a lot of talking about like doing as much as you can to improve the world and being excited about the future and being excited about everything that's going to happen. And I think I came to this sort of realization that you can't control much of what's around you, but you can control like how you look at it. And it's just better to be optimistic about the future and try and be optimistic, because it's like it serves you so much more if you're excited about the future. And it's like, even if everything this is the way I see it, I guess, even if I'm literally in a burning building and everything's like crumbling around me, I'd rather be the guy that's like excited, has hope, thinks everything's going to be okay, than like sitting there like, oh fuck, I'm burning, it's over. I think you can really, you really get to pick and choose to a certain extent. And it just like, I feel like it would serve everyone better to try and be more optimistic. I think especially it's hard being like younger generations at the moment in particular, I feel, because it feels like the party's happened and we've missed the boat a little bit. On like capitalism is like we get the late stage crazy bullshit, and everyone else had like the
we
free
missed the
money.
Good bit. Yeah. The post-war fucking property for 9 raspberries.
Exactly.
Yeah,
But
you're
I
like,
think
fuck, man.
I think people just need to get like, I don't know. I think it's just easy. It's easier to be pessimistic as well, I think, because it's this whole thing of like you can blame external factors, but then if you're being optimistic and it becomes a lot more like, oh, what am I doing? What should I be doing to work towards things?
Yeah.
Which is, I think, harder to wrestle with. But it definitely has helped me a lot in, firstly, like, I feel like it makes me more ambitious if I'm just thinking like, oh, what do I want to see in the world? What do I want to accomplish? And then setting these, and this is something that I think is what really captivated and gave the EAC movement momentum, is like he's just like really motivating, and he'll always be like telling you to do the crazy, risky, out there thing, which I think is often like drilled out of people. And I think that being around people like that is quite captivating. And that's what like drew people in to begin with. And I'm not sure, there's a lot of like talk around this sort of like EAC sphere that I don't necessarily agree with, but I just think the idea of like pushing everyone around you to be like the most of themselves and be optimistic and do as much as they can is like a really strong message that sort of resonated with me.
As like a perpetual optimist, yeah, I'm very much inclined to agree, because it's like I very much lean. I think I'm lucky. Like my disposition has always been very optimistic, and so I think it's like, I don't know if it's like an inherited trait or just something I've picked up, but I do think it's that balancing. The internet now is very much, it privileges kind of like sardonic, negative takes, like the whole point of like, it just, that's the culture it breeds. So I think having that almost like positive stoic counterculture is very, very important. And there's really no other way to live, because it's like, well, even if it is all going to shit, you may as well have a good time or try to have a good time while it's happening. Like it's that kind of thing of like, and being optimistic doesn't mean necessarily that you have to just like accept it all at face value and be like, well, it's all
Yeah.
fucked. It's like, no, you actually are then in an emotional state where you have a path forward suddenly by just choosing like, oh, okay, this is fucked. What will I
Mm.
do about it?
Yeah, I
It sounds
think
almost dumb and very cliche podcast bro to say, but it's like you kind of want to balance out your naive optimism and your realistic optimism. Because I feel like
yeah.
optimism is instantly seen as naive of like, oh, this fucking guy, no idea what he's
Yeah.
doing. Sure, buddy. And it's like, you kind of it's like that almost like left curve into the mid curve and then back
Yeah.
into the right curve of like, haha, everything's good. It's like, no, everything's fucked and we're all screwed. What are we gonna do? And then you go back to the right curve of like, haha, it's all good.
Yeah. I think that's something I struggle with most when I'm like, I notice it a lot talking to, and I think it's just because there's a natural tendency when you're like with friends to complain about like stuff that you don't like. But I don't know, when I'm
Yep.
with out with friends and stuff like that, and just like talking to a lot of people, is like coming across like negativity and pessimism about the world and the situations that we're in. And I often, even I don't know, even if I'm not feeling it that much at the time, and I still have those thoughts sometimes. Like it can feel like everything's hard and stuff like that. But then trying to, I guess, turn it around and see the opportunities that are in front of you is a much, yeah, it's just like a better way to live. And it's more motivating and it's going to lead to better outcomes for everyone.
Yep.
And it doesn't serve me to feel like it's hopeless, because then I won't get anything done.
Yeah. Well, it's also that thing of like, you don't want to be the guy that, like, in a shitty situation is like, no, this is sweet. And it is objectively a shit situation because there's nothing more infuriating than that guy being around of like, there are times where you just have to admit, like, oh, listen, this sucks. But hey, flipping back to negativity just for a brief second, what do you see as kind of like the biggest problem facing crypto now? And I guess like, what would your optimistic schizo solution be for it if you had to pick one?
I think there's a lot of people that promise a lot and under deliver, and try and like mislead people with like technical jargon into believing something just to sort of extract capital from them. I think that people saw Ethereum blow up and they saw Bitcoin blow up, and they see like a bunch of guys waving technical terms that manage to attract a lot of money. And then they see that and they go, oh, I can probably do this as well. And I think that, yeah, people raising money to do things that are like not quite genuine. And I think that I always like, there's like this scam spectrum, I would say, in crypto of like, and I remember I've actually made memes of this, of like allocating things like how much of a grift are they versus like a sincere project. And I
Yep.
think everything has like a little bit of a grift in it, because you can sell, I think there's like a bit of an art in selling something that you don't quite have yet, and then using that momentum to make it a reality. Is, I think that's like one of the best things about capital markets, is like if you sell a big enough vision, you can kind of just manifest the vision. And I think that stuff's really cool. But then there's some people that, I guess, just want to get the money, grab the bag and bolt without delivering. And I think a lot of the time, like there's so much money moving around in crypto that you get too much money too quickly to then be motivated to execute. And mostly I think you saw it in earlier projects, but it still happens. I think that these projects like stagnate because they get too much money too quickly and they lose the hustle and drive. Because I don't doubt that, like, I don't know, Cardano or some of these like random chains, I don't doubt that like somewhere along the line someone was like really hustling to make something happen. Except I think what happens is the product just becomes the token price and it's already succeeded. So then there's no pressure to deliver. And I think I might be being a bit too pessimistic, because normally when I meet, I like Polygon's another one that stands out to me, is like I don't really know what they do, and they're like a massive company, and there's like a bunch of tokens in the top 50. I feel bad for signaling out like Cardano and Polygon, because I have friends I think that work at Polygon as well that I have good relationships with. But and I'm sure people think that about Infinex as well. But I think there's just these like massive projects that grab the bag and then don't really have any incentive to deliver. And I think that I'm sort of used to it because I grew up on like Kickstarter, and I would YOLO money at like random Kickstarter campaigns. I don't know if you know Kickstarter, but it was like,
Yeah.
I think that was my like precursor to crypto, is that I would throw money at so many Kickstarter video game pre-sales,
So you say
and
that
none
good
of them,
VCs should be raised on Kickstarter. It's like,
yeah.
what's your what's your
And none,
background in being let down on Kickstarter? All
yeah,
right, cool. There we
exactly.
go.
I think that like Kickstarter is a good way to start young, and you realize that like someone can be really flashy and not necessarily deliver. And I want to think that like most of the people actually don't intend to do it. I think they genuinely think that they can
That was literally my next question of like, do you
deliver.
think that a lot of this is intentional or unintentional? Like, it's people with good ideas and they want to do something and they have that in the spur of the moment of like, oh, cool, I have the skills, I have the stuff, we could make something awesome. And then, yeah, they get that $500 million payment and they're kind of just like, oh,
Yeah,
well,
I think that's.
there we go.
I think I want to believe that people aren't, scamming it on purpose. It more just sort of falls together, because I think that overall, I remember I was looking into this recently because I've been looking into ICOs a lot, and I was looking at like whether most retail people did well in ICOs or whether they got scammed. And it's like people in general tend to under allocate to like straight scams and over allocate to a lot of stuff that does pretty well. So I think maybe it's not as bad as it feels being on the ground, but yeah, it definitely feels like sometimes stuff gets way more money than I would like. But it's probably just me coping and seething that it's not my bags. Like,
shit, my token didn't get the check. No, that's really interesting. I've actually never heard anyone say it quite like that, as that's what like the biggest problem is. Yeah, even just from like a removed normie perspective, that tracks really well, because you do look at it, and if you were to come in from the outside and then you look at all these chains, and that's like, okay, well, they got a X $100 million check. What the fuck are they doing? Like, what is it? What does it even do? And it's like, oh, well, it's still in development. And again, like that's part of being in capital markets, is this idea of like, it's on that spectrum of like hustling, like an Apple startup situation to a Theranos, where it's like, well, someone's going to deliver something fantastic. We want to be the people that allocate to it early. So it makes sense. But yeah, no, that's really interesting about that big hit, that big lump sum, just kind of anesthetizing the drive to actually do anything with it. Because it's like, well, I have my money. There's a chain that kind of works. It's got some usage. I don't know what volume Cardano does on a daily basis, or
I think
what you do on it. I'm happy for you to single out Cardano, because it's like one of my favorite kind of like pet hates. Sorry, Charles Hoskinson, but it is just one of those things where it's a PhD's wet dream. It's just like, what the fuck? It's really technical. There's all these things happening, and it's got cool mathematician names, but like, who's using it? Like, I don't know of a single person that's like, oh yeah, I'm using DeFi on Cardano, or I'm lending or borrowing or shitcoining, or apart from, the army of bag holders that would probably come out once this clip hits Twitter, be like, hey, they're shitting on Cardano. But apart from a lot of ADA in bio Twitter users, I don't know who's genuinely going to that chain and being like, oh cool, I'm using their products.
I think that there's like there's a clip of me somewhere that got made by a bunch of Cardano people that was just me shitting on Charles Hodgkinson in a Twitter space, and it got a lot of engagement of just people calling me an idiot, because
that'll happen.
I think I said something along the lines of like, you can't have. They published a paper on keeping a stablecoin stable, and it was like it was basically Terra Luna paper, except made for Cardano, I think. And I remember I was talking about it. I was like, you can't like pretend that that's science, because no one really understands any of this enough for you to really like publish this like it's a scientific finding. Like, no one understands any of these smart contracts enough for you to say this. And then they got the clip of me saying, no one understands smart contracts. And they were like, look at this idiot. But it's because I was on a Twitter space with Charles Hodgkinson. I don't know how you say his name.
Yeah.
And he left because he was just ranting the whole time he was on. And then he left and someone was like talking about him. And I was like, oh, I don't know. I think it's kind of a grift. And then, yeah, someone in the audience must have been recording me shitting on him and posted it. Except it made my day when I saw all these Cardano people angry about me.
Oh, dude, I think one of the most like viral things I've ever done on Twitter, well, definitely the most rage I've ever received was taking shots at the Hedera people. Boy, oh boy, did that go badly. It was a thing at Cointelegraph. They published, their foundation published like a thing about BlackRock. It was a whole fiasco, but essentially Cointelegraph like corrected, essentially said like, oh, it's not quite what Hedera said. It's a little different.
Yeah.
And they went crazy on it. And then I just put out this kind of like innocuous tweet that I thought was a shit post. And it was like GM to everyone except desperate Hedera bag holders. Oh boy, dude! I had people like messaging the editors in chief at Cointelegraph asking for me to be fired, and I was like, "What?"
That's crazy.
It like went turbo viral. The people from the foundation are like, "This idiot works at Cointelegraph. How dare he?" And I'm like, "What the fuck is going on?"
Yeah,
but again, it's like you look at the network and what's happening there, and you're like, "But no one." But and even the people that hold the token, it's like, when's the last time you did something on the chain? Let's be honest.
I think it's also much harder. I notice, like, because this stuff's really hard. From the outside, it's like, oh, nothing's happening. But then on the inside, there's actually like when I meet people involved with this stuff, I think that's what changes my opinion. Is like I've met some people. There's like a Cardano meet, I think, in Sydney, and I went once, and like the people there were like interested in it for the right reasons, and I understood what had roped them in. And I think that Charles is a really good salesperson. Like he's pretty goat at selling the vision that because like I don't even think he's really from a technical background, but he manages to like create this mystique of himself as this like genius researcher. So I think he's nailed this like PR sales thing, which I have to respect to a certain extent. But yeah, I think that there's just not, I don't know. I don't think that he's sincere in his intentions, which is what it comes down to me, whether it's something that I like respect or not. Is like, I think playing the PR game and stuff is okay if you have like, you want to deliver something crazy and cool. And if you're like, oh, but to be able to do this, I need to talk absolute mad shit to get everyone to back me, then I understand it. Except if it's like, oh, I need to talk mad shit so I can give myself all this bank and not deliver anything and run off to the Bahamas, then I think it's not quite as
but like social media just allows for that, and it's very difficult to tell who's sincere, especially if someone's even remotely technically gifted as well. Like if they appear smarter than the average person and they're good at giving that off that persona, it's very difficult, especially as like a retail investor, to get a sense of who is doing the next Ethereum, or who's just literally creating a fucking ghost chain and taking their VC checks. So no, that's probably one of the better takes I've heard.
I think like meme coins is a response to that in a lot of ways, which is like everyone is like, oh fuck these VC tokens that don't deliver anything. I'll just invest in something that promises not to deliver anything. And then if anything happens out of it, it's like way exceeding expectations. Like if a meme coin does literally anything, it's like amazing and makes headlines. And it's because they don't promise anything. So anything that comes out of it is like exceeding expectations. And I think sadly the same things happen with meme coins now, where it's like launched by big teams and market makers, and it's all kind of fake and suffers from all the same problems. But I think, it's the same thing again, is like if there's an opportunity to make money, and there's a really interesting article about this called Geeks, Mops and Sociopaths, which is basically that like geeks have an idea and it attracts the mops who are the members of public, and the members of public help fund the idea if they're sort of interested in it. And any time like an idea or thing attracts enough public interest, you'll have like a sociopath rock up who just pretends to be associated with the thing to take all the money. And I'll send you the article afterwards. It describes in a lot more detail. It's talking about subcultures, which I think is a little microcosm of it. But I think you see it happen with like meme coins and blockchain and a lot of things where like the really early people are really pure in their intentions. And then people come along who are a little bit more like conniving and they just want to grab money. But I think that the reality is the people that win are the people somewhere in the middle. Like if you're too pure, about your intentions, you can't play the games enough. Is the sad thing. Is like you'd like to believe that the people with the really pure intentions win, but you need to like know the game and play the game a little bit to really
you need a little hint of that dark triad kind of.
And that's what
you need to channel some of that Machiavelli in there and be like,
what
okay,
the article like closes out with. It's like you have to be a little bit evil is what it calls it. But I think that's it's a banger for that sort of cyclical attention games.
I really want to read that, but no, I fully agree in the meme coins almost being like an autoimmune response. Sorry, and not just an immune response to the whole low float high FDV meta of the current cycle, because it's like all the shit that's launched this cycle has been at like multi-billion-dollar FDVs, like WorldCoins, Celestia, Dimension, those kind of things have all just hit the market. And if you're a retail investor that bought those at launch, it's not like picking up Solana at 500 mil. It's like, oh shit, it's gone down 80%. What the fuck's the go? I thought crypto was the land of buying shit off the floor, and what's going on here? And I do think that that's such a huge contributing factor to the success of memes, of everyone. You sprinkle in a little bit of that financial nihilism of like, oh man, well, fuck, the world's kind of like hostile to me as a young person. Fuck it, I'm just going to gamble on whatever. I want my GameStop. I want my Doge moment. I saw something that came out of, I've forgotten his name at the moment, but it was a Masari data engineer talking about memes being a lot more extractive than the hype cycles of the past. Because it's all well and good to laugh and be like, lol, meme coins are funny, which they are. Like, my portfolio is, for better or for worse, predominantly memes at this point, which is fucking crazy to think about. Like all the right curve theses I had have just fallen in a heap, and all of the shit that I was like, haha, this coin made me laugh, have gone really, really well. But his take was like the old DeFi projects of the past, and like, just old infra projects that really took off. And even though they were, speculative kind of hype bubble, they provided some kind of innovation. They moved shit forward. There was something that people took. There was residual value from them that added to the crypto space in a whole. Whereas meme coins are literally just like a huge fuck you and like a, who cares? I launched this in 3 seconds on Pump Fund.
I think that the really pro meme coin take is that like I would argue that like Bitcoin, and I think this is kind of common, like Bitcoin is basically a meme coin because it's like not technically, it's like meme coin of fuck the banks, and you buy it if you want to be like fuck the banks, and it's kind of gained a lot of traction as that, and it's built a little community of this own currency. And I think that oddly enough, meme coins in some certain ones, I think it's the same thing. There's like sincere ones and then more like grift ones. But I think the more sincere meme coins are actually really interesting in terms of, a way of building a decentralized community. I see it as sort of the next step from, we had NFTs previously, and people would build communities and culture around NFTs, but meme coins are actually better because it's a little bit more inclusive of anyone can feel part of it by just buying a small fraction. And there's interesting and weird cultural stuff that has come out of some of them. And then, the idea that you can just sort of go, hey, I'm going to start printing these coins and I can give them out to whoever I want. And then people can decide whether they want to value them or not. And it's like, if I get enough interesting, valuable people in my little community and start sending these things around, then people will start assigning a higher value to them. It's kind of, even though there's no on-chain innovation, there's definitely some innovation in like, how do I bootstrap the use of this thing? And I think it's really interesting when you look back at like the first meme coin, Dogecoin, of the founder of that. He's actually an Aussie guy, or one of the guys in the team was Aussie. And he's really anti-crypto now and like sold all his bags. So he's not doing too well, except when you look into like why he started it in the first place, I think it's actually really powerful and still relevant now, is that he went like, the average person is not going to be interested in Bitcoin. It's too weird and technical. If I slap a Doge face on it, and I think this ties to our like slop, everything's going to be brain rot in the future thing as well. Is like, oh, if I slap a funny meme on the front of it, it makes it more approachable for new people, and a bunch of people want to be involved just because it's a funny dog. and you kind of like make it easier to onboard people who wouldn't normally accept cryptocurrency. It's like the sugar to make the medicine go down. And I think meme coins in a lot of ways are similar to that, in that like if it gets people who weren't previously going to participate in these like weird, interesting online communities and now they participate because it's like a dumb meme coin and it's gambling, then I think that they're actually like kind of interesting and good thing for the space in the long term. Even though a lot of the time it's just like, I'll buy this thing and then dump it. But I still think that like the attention games are fun and interesting. And I think that people a lot of the time that come for that like weird degenerate gambling, they sort of get roped in and pilled on the broader vision. And eventually they're like, hey, this stuff's pretty cool. So I think it will actually, this sort of stuff, it seems really dumb and pointless, but I actually think it's like really, really important and will have a lot of benefits down the line.
Yeah, I know a lot of people for whom Dogecoin was the gateway drug. And it was that initial thing of like, I mean, dude, I think because I bought Bitcoin and ETH first, but then I think my third purchase was Dogecoin. Again, like I bought it very early and I sold all of it like on a triple or something and was like, holy shit, what? I'm a genius. But it was that moment of like, it was that initial almost like dopamine hit. It was my first real one in crypto. And then it took me like 18 months from there. But slowly but surely, I was like, public internet money, hey? That's an interesting thing. I wouldn't say that's true for everyone. I'm sure people just took their fucking bags and got out. But no, I think I'm quite partial to that thesis of like there's hidden value here. It's harder to quantify, and it's it's not necessarily just that thing of like, oh, well, there's innovation now in the space, but it's like you have that social coherency of like more people come in, as long as they don't get fantastically burned by top blasting it, in which case they go, well, this whole thing's a scam, I'm fucking out, which also has to happen with memes as well. Like, you know, at the top, someone's buying that coin.
I think that's where like Infinex sort of comes in, is you can't stop someone top blasting, but I think what's even more likely to scare someone off forever is they just like lose their money, or like, if you buy something and then it goes down, you kind of know it's your fault. And as much as you'll be annoyed, you kind of know it's your own fault because you picked the ticker, whatever it is. But I feel like it's kind of like, it's the difference between losing someone fair and square and someone cheating, is that if you lose your money because you sent it to the wrong address, or you bridged incorrectly and you just lost funds, I think that's really likely to scare someone off from ever using it again. Or if you just lose your seed phrase, you get your money fished. Like if your first experience with crypto is just having your money fished, that's really going to scare you off. Except if you buy the wrong ticker, at least you kind of know it's your fault in the end.
Sure. You're like, well, there is no one to blame but me.
Yeah. And I think that's like the fair losses is it's going to happen, but you just have to hope that overall people allocate their capital well, which you want to believe is going to be good as a whole, maybe not individually, but you definitely want to reduce people just getting straight up scammed.
Yeah, no, that's also the huge thing. I'm a professional yapper, so I tend to strike up conversations with lots of random people, and they'll ask me like, "Oh, what do you do?" And I'm like, "I'm in crypto." And then, like an overwhelming majority of people that have a crypto story will be something to do with being scammed. And I'm like, damn, like that's the read here.
That happens I find like a surprising amount of people fall for those like love scam bots. That always scares me. It's like I've met people at crypto meets that like have money in these like, I don't know, they're not called love scam, they're called something else. And then the other thing, because I often ask Uber drivers, especially when I'm traveling, I always talk to the Uber drivers. Except sometimes when I'm here, I always ask them, and then I always ask them about crypto. And it is sad. Like a lot of them will just have been scammed by like a fake exchange or something like that. Like it's not even that they've bought sometimes it's they've bought like a really obviously scam token. And I'm like, you took the punt. You knew what you were doing. They're like, oh yeah, I bought this snake meme coin from Karate Kid or something like that. And it's like, okay, you knew the game you were playing and buying that. But if they're like, hey, I have this money on Coinbase, and then it's like a fake Coinbase app.
That's fucking brutal. Yeah.
That's the ones that, I feel like that's like unfair. If you've bought something dumb because you've been talked into it, I think some people would say it's the same sort of thing. But for me, there's a pretty big distinction there, whether you're tricked into buying the token versus like really lied to about what you're buying.
Absolutely. And I think that's another thing of like, knowing your risk as you enter a market. And it's like, well, this is a place where we're all grown-ups. We make bad decisions. It happens, unfortunately. But then, yeah, just like, and then there's the outright thing of like, I thought I was using Binance and I put X $1,000 on fake Binance and it turned out to be not Binance.
They're really smart about it as well. They make it like seem like you're winning, and then they go, oh, but to withdraw, you need to give us just this little bit more money. And I'm sure that they're experts in like how to convince people to part with their money like that. It's sad that it's so prevalent.
Yeah, products that actually get rid of that, ideal.
So what's your hot ticker at the moment? What's your favorite meme coin at the moment?
Oh boy, my favorite meme coin at the moment. Fuck it. It's my own podcast. I can chill my bags. Dude, honestly, I went across a lot of different meme coins at the start of the cycle, but I've consolidated heavily into PopCat, and that's my that's my ticker of choice. I'm like, yep, I hit it like fairly early. I'm lucky to be friends with, like, on Rotato Capital, a couple of the guys there are very gifted at meme coin meta. They just are like, no, this one's the one. And it's like, why? They've got a lot of reasons, but it always comes down to like, nah, it's kind of just like ball tingles. And you're like, okay. so it's like, it's one of those things of like, hey, what's your thesis on this? And it's just like, well, the ticker's good. But no, I like PopCat as a token. There's a couple of more like on-chain PvP ones that I think are very good, like Retardio in particular. I like.
Retardio is funny.
Yeah. Just like really funny schizo shit.
Do you know DMT?
Oh boy, do I know DMT?
I love DMT.
Big fan. And it's like, it's meme coin adjacent. I'm a huge Dream Machine token maximalist. That's like my...
I didn't go heavy into that. I found it so early. I was looking at it at like $3 and stuff like that. And I was just like, oof. And I remember I bought some and then I sold it at like 12 as you do. And I thought I was a genius.
Yeah. Brilliant.
But, and I was like, it can't go that much higher than this, right?
The Sanko team are great. Like we host a podcast separately on Sanko.
Oh, really?
Like, yeah. So I got like the Rotato Capital podcast, which is me and like 4 other guys. We host that, like we stream that on Sanko. I know the team pretty well.
I met
those
some
guys
of the team in
they're great,
Denver,
man.
Denver, actually. I met some of the guys there.
Cool. Did you meet Dew and Smoothie, or
is that the blonde hair? Who's the blonde haired guy?
Probably, I'm gonna say Smoothie. I know them as PFPs.
He also streamed the Milady Rave in Denver.
Ah, okay.
On Sanko, which I'm DJing in, actually. So there's a live stream of me DJing on Sanko somewhere.
Nice, dude. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'm like, they're doing that thing of like bringing that old school, like original internet level fun into crypto, and I just really like it.
I've just seen, this is kind of like adjacent, but I did a tweet right before this podcast started, actually, that was bringing back wagons would fix birth rates, but no one wants to have that conversation.
I saw that, dude.
I've had a few people tag someone's tagged you and said, please ask Shaman to elaborate more on the boat episode, please. I don't know. I'm guessing this is one of the Rotato Capital guys.
Yeah, it is. That's Swiss.
But I don't have a lot to elaborate there, but I really love, I think that we had these like beautiful wagons and utes. I love Australian made cars. Like, that's how you'll know when I've really made it, is I'll have a really loud HSV Maloo ute or a wagon. I won't have a Lambo. I'll have like a really obnoxious Australian muscle car.
Fuck yeah.
Like full-blown bogan spec. And I just think that they're like the pinnacle of automotive engineering.
Oh, dude. Definitely. And you can slap the "if it's rockin', don't bother knocking" sticker on the back of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that tweet was just kind of inspired by, like, I don't know. Yeah, earlier in Australia we had the shag and wagon that, like, there's no way that would culturally be okay now. But I think it's because like culture's become much more sexually sterilized over time. I think it's because in the 90s they went a little bit too crazy. We got a little bit too sexual, and then we're sort of bouncing back from that.
Dude, fuck yeah. Fuck yeah, that's the, like, when I make it, that, like, I won't tell anyone, but there will be signs. It's just an old Holden Kingswood, and you're like, fuck yeah. Nah, that's ideal.
Yeah.
But dude, that's definitely like that's probably like a big side effect downside of just internet culture in general, is just the lack of intimacy for younger people. And I feel like kind of sucks.
I think that post COVID is I think we'll see a bounce back though. I think
Definitely.
everything, like, I don't know, I feel like everything works itself out. We're just always overcorrecting is the issue, is like we can never land right where it should be. It's like we're just always overcorrecting either way. And I think that, like, it's like previously, I think that there was this massive overcorrection into like hyper woke type stuff, like a couple of years ago. And then now I think there's a little bit of the bounce. Now it feels like a little bit like culturally overcorrecting the other way. Like you were saying, like you see this like extremist stuff on Twitter way more and things like that. Except I think like overall trust that things will find their way. I think that even though intimacy doesn't exist as it did before, I'm sure the younger generations will work something out, or at least I hope.
I hope they'll figure it out, because yeah, I mean, you can see that in like the use of dating apps. Like I've seen a lot of those charts recently as well, of like, you know, Bumble posting just like shocking earnings, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, really? And it's so obvious in hindsight that everyone's like, oh no, like everyone's just going to be on dating apps forever. And it's like, well, everyone was locked inside for 2 years. uh
Yeah.
what did we think was going to happen? Like,
Yeah,
you
it's
literally
pretty
shut everyone
crazy.
inside, and then we're like, ah, shit, everyone's using dating apps a lot more. Fucking
I can't
surprise.
imagine I can't imagine the people that were like just turning 18 and just starting to go out and then getting hit by lockdown. That is just so, because I feel
Dude,
like I
that was
got
my
a
little
tape.
brother. He
Yeah.
was like, I'm 8 years older than him. So during COVID, he was like 16 turning 17. And that was like, they were just starting to have like house parties, go out, do things. And then it was like, nope, stay
Yeah.
inside. And I was just like, oh,
Yeah, I
brutal.
can't. And then, yeah, there was definitely like a massive search, because I was still organizing parties in COVID. I like organized, not in COVID, sorry, right afterwards. My first rave was like shut down because of lockdowns, and then got really into it right at the end. And there was definitely like a bit of a renaissance resurgence right out of lockdown, where there was just like so many parties going on and tickets would sell out like
Yep.
instantly. Like we would announce an event and we would just sell out tickets. And our biggest event, we sold like 700 tickets or something. We had this like 14-hour rave from 10 till like midday the next day.
Fuck yeah.
And except the appetite for it dropped off in like a couple of months, and I feel like everyone settled into a normal rhythm. But there was definitely like this like post-COVID massive hype party time, except now it feels like we've settled back to a norm that was definitely less than what it was
Than
like before.
before. Yeah, I agree. I remember COVID wrapping up and just being like, oh, holy shit, I get to see people again and just go out and party and drink with everyone. Fuck yeah, off we go.
Yeah.
No, that was sick. But yeah, man, respectful of your time. But I did want to just like finish with like well, first of all, what are your favorite meme coins? I didn't ask you back, huh?
I'm pretty boring. I'm not super deep into meme coins.
Yeah.
I like DMT.
Mhm.
Because they have the game and stuff. I guess they're not completely a meme coin. And then I'm boring. I like Doge because it's like the original one. And then I feel guilty for not having more MOG and WIF. I feel like really, really basic
Not
picks
good.
here. But that's what I feel like I should have. I should have more of. Every time I see them, I'm like, fuck, why don't I buy more of this token?
Yeah.
But then again, I've been sitting here like thinking, fuck, I should be more allocated to meme coins. And then the past couple of weeks, I've been like, I'm kind of glad I didn't allocate more to meme coins.
Dude, like I put it out in NGMI newsletter, but I literally like entire port sank 80% in 3 days during that nuke, because I just desperately over allocated to memes. I remember at the time I was like, I'm a genius. And then at the lows, I was like, I'm the biggest idiot to ever
Yeah, that's how
touch
it always is.
cryptocurrency. And so it's that classic, just like, oh my God. Like if I wasn't so ETH poor, I would have more MOG for sure. It's one of those things that I'm like, well, I've got my cat coin exposure on Solana, so that's that. I'm covered for cat coins. That's
Yeah.
if Kane's hiring any more analysts, this is the kind of insights he can expect from this guy. But yeah, moving forward, man, like I don't know, like the market, I saw a Lawliette tweet the other day that was talking about how this cycle has just been like kind of fucking hard mode in terms of like, no, there's been no PVE moment. Like, there hasn't been this like, fuck yeah, everything's going up vertically. It's just been this kind of like rotation from sector to sector for months now. And each time, and I've been like fallen victim to this of being like, oh yeah, cool, it's starting, or like, oh, I'm a genius because I'm in this thing, and then only to watch it just kind of like slow bleed out. And it's just kind of like hard to pin where things are going to move. And I feel like a lot of people have become jaded from this kind of price action, because I feel like everyone's had at some point in this cycle a lot of unrealized gains that they've kind of sat on, and they've been like, oh, fuck. I'm still very much in the camp of expecting higher prices later this year, moving into 2025. What's your feel at the moment? How
Yeah,
do you
I
see
think
things?
I'm like such a boomer. I feel like I'm too attached to my like previous like DeFi ideals of I'm still a massive ETH maxi. I probably don't own enough Solana, but I definitely want to be scooping more up. And I've started buying over the past, after we had that like terrible week, the sort of, I think Solana went down to like 140 Aussie or something like that. Maybe not that. Actually, maybe it didn't go that low. But
Oh no, 140. Yeah, it was 140 Aussie for sure. Yeah.
yeah, and then I'm like picking up more Solana, I think, because I was too ETH maxi coded, and then I don't know. I've been really long Aave and a couple of other DeFi tokens for a long time, expecting them to go up off the basis of like a lot of people use Aave, and then I've been looking at like some of the lending protocols on Solana, because I sort of think like I'm pretty interested in Camino Finance and some of the lending on Solana, because that's like the area that I'm really interested in is like DeFi and lending. Except the tokens, like, I don't know, Aave just keeps, MakerDAO is the one that I really love that's actually performed well this cycle, which I've been pretty happy with. But overall, a lot of that stuff, like I just keep seeing their like revenue go up and there's more people using it, but then the token price just like doesn't move.
You're like, fucking go up.
Like it's crazy. Like Aave has, I don't know, when I last looked at it, they've got like 20 billion TVL or something ridiculous, which is just, it just like dwarfs everything except the token just isn't. I think it's one of those things where a lot of this like infrastructure stuff, it like works too well that you stop paying attention to it once it's something you can just kind of use. And I expect that to like flip at some point. I guess that's why I remain really long ETH, in that it's like still the only place. I don't know. I don't feel safe having, like, if I have stablecoins or something, I always want them on like Base or on Ethereum. I don't really want stablecoins sitting on Solana because it doesn't feel, I know it's like safe enough now, but it doesn't, I can't sit well knowing that I'm easily going to be able to access them as much as I can on ETH or on L2s. And also just like flexibility of there's like more off ramps and things like that. But yeah, so I'm hoping that if I keep investing in the stuff that I use, eventually the market will stop being wrong. But I don't know if I don't know how much conviction I have in that. I think I should just be allocating more to memes and things that are going to be exciting to retail.
Well, that is like that's probably like one of my bigger fears with this cycle, is just like how much correlation is there between like user activity and then token price. Because it's like I've gone very left curve this cycle and it's done reasonably well. And I'm like, I put a lot of that down to luck and timing more than I do to like any kind of like, oh, wow, I knew this was going to happen. It was more just like, oh, fuck it, I'm going to swing for the fences on these things. But in terms of like the DeFi ideals, like it is something that I still hold quite strongly to. And I'm quite partial to that idea of like, well, this is public money on the internet. This probably has one of the better product market fits out of the crypto industry. Like, surely this is something that we can expect to appreciate in value. But I am quite concerned. We had Taiki Maeda on the Brotato Capital podcast recently, and he said very similar things to what you said around like, well, come on. Like, look at it. It's like it's a good product. It's safe. It's secure. It's the most decentralized. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I do think that there will be that moment, but I'm unsure as to what the catalyst or the driver will be that makes people go, aha, this is what we should be investing in.
Yeah, I don't know. I think one thing that I'm really interested in and watching is the like PayPal thing on like Camino Finance on Solana. I think it's like crazy to me that PayPal is like incentivizing.
PYUSD? Yeah, like,
incentivizing this, because I think their yields were like 20% or something crazy at some point. Like they're
yep,
throwing so much money at incentivizing this high yield stablecoin DeFi pool, and they're like a relatively. Except I think what they sort of realize is that like Tether prints so much money, and they're like, we're probably more trustworthy than Tether. So if we just get the supply of this PayPal stablecoin up on Solana, then we can like try and usurp Tether, and people will use us,
yep.
and they'll make so much money in the long term if they can like secure a position as like a Tether alternative. They've just done the maths, and it's something that I've always been interested in as well. It's like launching a stablecoin seems like just the most profitable thing in the world, but
Yeah.
getting that distribution, having the money to bankroll incentives is the hard part.
Well, this is the funny thing. I still am like a Tether truther in the sense that, like, you know, Tether have done a bunch of shit that you're like, holy fuck, guys, like that's definitely not legal. Like there's things that they've done, but it's become that meme at the moment of like the Chad Tether user and like the Virgin USDC. Like I
Yeah,
just instantly think of that meme of like the guy looking real downtrodden. It's like fully regulated
yeah.
USDC, yada yada yada. It's like Tether like doesn't give a fuck,
I think that
and they're
like
just printing insane amounts of money from just being like, oh yeah, we just have like billions
they made
in fucking.
$4.5 billion profit, I think, first
Yep.
half of this year,
They
which is
have the
just
most
like
revenue per employee. Sorry, the most profit per employee of any company on the planet by like some horrific margin.
yeah.
Like
But I,
unbelievable.
I think it kind of like them being opaque is what works in their favor, in that no one can. I think if anyone had a full like transparency over their books, there would be a trade in like shorting them.
Yep.
But because they're so not regulated and they have no one knows what they're holding, is like no one wants to go up against them because they know that Tether has, I don't know, however many billions of dollars liquid cash they do have to like honor redemptions,
Yep.
but no one wants to like make the play of trying to actually fight against that, because it's like throwing money into a pit and hoping that like the pit's going to fill up, and then if it does you win, but you're not sure how deep it is.
No, that's exactly it. I'm just like, well, I don't want to pick a fight with those
Yeah.
guys now. And it is one of those things of like, as like on the ethical side, I'm like, oh man, you know, it would be good to see if they have done terrible things in the past, sure, bring them to justice. But as like an actual crypto user, there is that idea of like, you know, let's not go like rummaging around in that black box too
Mm.
much, because it's like if there is some kind of liquidity crisis, it's just like it's very much proven itself to be reliable stablecoin over
Yeah.
time. So it's like, fuck it, you know, mate. I think that's a good place to wrap up before we ramble on for too much longer.
No, it's been really good.
Thanks so much for coming on. This was fantastic.
Yeah,
Really
it was
appreciate
awesome.
you.
Awesome chatting. I appreciate your time.
Likewise, man. Where can people find you on Twitter and
Yeah,
socials?
just Stableshaman on Twitter, infinex.xyz, make an account. It's really easy. And yeah, hopefully more content coming out of the Infinex account as well. Stay tuned. Want to do some IRL stuff in the next little while. And then I guess also we've got events coming up in Token 2049. And then I guess if anyone listening is Australian, I actually also run meets in Sydney for anyone working in crypto. So hit me up on Telegram, same as my Twitter handle. We normally do a monthly meet for people that work in Web3.
Dude, fuck yeah. Thanks for coming on.
Radical. See you later.